All right, welcome back to the show. That was a lot of golf talk
Yeah.
in block 2. But now joining us is Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets to talk some hockey. Steven Psihogios, let me just throw this out there just so you know, Justin Pooney, it's his birthday today. So if you want to say happy birthday, you can.
Happy birthday, Justin.
Yes.
Hope you have a great day. All the best to you and your favorite sports teams. Your Canucks, they've been winning lots of games for you. So
yeah, we were just talking about we did not want I don't want that. My wish is them to lose games, tank. I want Bedard.
But you see that? Look, Stevie Psihogios, stand-up guy, says happy birthday to you.
I appreciate it.
Who else is saying happy birthday to you? I did.
Yeah.
You gotta be happy. Oh, yeah, producer Sean did.
Yeah, he hasn't yet.
Okay, listen, I just want to throw this out there before we get into some puck talk and some Stanley Cup odds. If you're not following Stevie Psihogios on Twitter, you're seriously missing out. You got to see this tweet. Sean, can you pull it up? Matt Murray's the kid who pulled the fire alarm at school because he wasn't prepared for a test. That is phenomenal. Stevie Z, one of our associate producers, he loved it. He was howling at that one, Stevie.
It's not as good as the Daniel Jones one, though. But
no, I feel like every week he comes on, there's a new tweet that's amazing.
I'm trying to tweet with this in mind so that I can get a tweet to talk about on next week's segment. and this one, it just came to mind once Matt Murray knocked the net off against the Senators. I'm like, he is that kid. He's not ready to write the test, so he pulls the fire alarm. He gets everybody out of it, gets himself out of it. It's getting ridiculous, though, with Matt Murray knocking the net off.
Hey, he is the king of doing that, and he never gets called for it.
No, never. The Minnesota Wild fans are still talking about it when he knocked it off 3 times earlier this year. It's insane, but he keeps getting away with it.
Yeah, that's at Steven Psihogios, by the way. Make sure you go and follow him on Twitter. Okay, you wrote a piece on NorthStar Bets the other day talking about some Stanley Cup contenders and where the value might be. Obviously, the Boston Bruins are favored and have a legitimate shot, obviously, to win the Stanley Cup. Tough go in the East. But in the West, it's kind of wide open, and there's a team you have your eye on, and that's the Edmonton Oilers that have some pretty good value attached to them as well.
At plus 1,400, I don't think you can do wrong betting on the Oilers to win the Cup. Their road is much easier than any of the teams in the Eastern Conference. That's a juggernaut of a conference. Boston loaded up, the Maple Leafs loaded up, Tampa Bay added. Basically, go down the line. Every team added in the East. You can't say the same about the West.
No.
And the Avalanche, yes, they're getting hot, but they've been right near the top of that odds leaderboard all season long, despite some tough struggles that they've had this year. But Edmonton at 14-1, they're looking like a really good hockey team. Mattias Ekholm is fitting in seamlessly. I mean, look at what he did last night against the San Jose Sharks. Last time I was on, I was talking about Ekholm being an underrated addition at the deadline. Underrated no more. He chips in with 2 goals, the game-tying goal last night, helps him get the win in overtime. Edmonton's looking like a real deal. And like I said, the most impressive part of their win last night, we were talking about this before we got on, most impressive part of the win was the fact that Jack Campbell was in and they still won because he does not make things easy on that team. Stuart Skinner's been the much better of the 2 goaltenders, and he's going to give them some solid goaltending come playoff time.
Of course, when you talk about the Oilers, you cannot fail to mention Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Stevie, he just looks like a man possessed this season just to prove to everybody that I can put this team on my back and carry them. Now, of course, you have Leon Draisaitl helping out, which is, probably the best Robin to Batman.
That's the best duo in the league.
Best duo in the league. But when you look at this, can Stuart Skinner be the guy to actually carry the mail through the playoffs? Because they're probably going to have to beat Colorado in the Western Conference Finals again if they want to reach to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I think so. The Avalanche have an unproven goaltender of their own in Alexander Georgiev. We haven't seen what he can do in the playoffs either. So if you're going to cast that question mark on the Oilers, I think you have to do the same for the Avalanche. I know Georgiev's been playing a lot better as of late, and he's been pretty reliable for them this season. But Skinner, in my mind, is an upgrade off of what Mike Smith gave the Oilers last year, and he was good enough to take them to the conference final. So I do think Skinner in the Western Conference, where we're not really seeing a lot of contenders pop up out of nowhere, I think there's more teams with goaltending question marks than not. When you look at the playoff picture in the West, I think Skinner's more than serviceable to get them through it.
The Leafs are taking on the Islanders tonight. In that same article where you mentioned that there's some value on the Oilers, you mentioned that a team to watch is the Islanders at plus 6,500 on NorthStar Bets. A bit of a stretch, no, Stevie?
A little bit, but not when you really dive into it. The Islanders are playing some really strong hockey, and it starts in net with Ilya Sorokin. And if we know one thing in the playoffs, you can steal a series with a hot goaltender, and he's been just that for the Islanders. In his last 12 games, he's got a .930 save percentage. He's been really good. At home this year, he's got a .932 save percentage. If you look at the playoff picture right now, the Islanders would play the Hurricanes in round one. And if I were to go on a limb and pick an upset pick in round one, I would not hold back on picking the Islanders to beat the Hurricanes. You don't have Svechnikov in the lineup for Carolina anymore. They have major goaltending concerns. They can't score. They're not a high-scoring team. As I mentioned, without Svechnikov, those have been exasperated, those concerns. They've lost 3 of their last 5. I think the Islanders could pull off an upset of the Hurricanes in round one if those two teams were to meet, and then see what happens from there. The Islanders are one of those teams that are built for the postseason. They're big, they're physical, they're nasty. Nobody really wants to play them.
And they got my former captain, Bo Horvat, as well. So I will be kind of...
He pretty much kicked off that trade frenzy.
Yeah,
we saw heading into the deadline.
Now, Ilya Samsonov gets the start tonight in Long Island. He's been not as good, to be kind of polite, on the road this year as compared
his
to home.
Splits are unbelievable.
Does his road record factor into the fact that Matt Murray is getting so much traction to get the start in game one of the playoffs?
I honestly don't know why Murray's getting so much traction. Like,
I do.
Look, he's led in
those 2 Stanley Cups.
Okay, but those were how many years ago? Those were like 6 years ago.
I agree.
Those were like 6-7 years ago. Look at his last 6 games. He's given up 4 goals in each of those games. And I'm not saying Samsonov's been a league burner at home and on the road, but he's been serviceable. His home numbers, you mentioned it, Albert, 926 save percentage at home. He's lights out. On the road, it drops to 900. That's an issue. Mm-hmm. It's weird how Murray has a better road save percentage than a home one. I don't understand that either. But at the end of the day, the Leafs kind of, I think, are finding themselves in a situation where if you don't have one starting netminder, or if you have 2 goaltenders that you think you can rely on in the playoffs, you don't have any goaltenders.
Right.
And I think they're kind of starting to figure that out with Samsonov's road splits. If you could bank a couple of good road starts, though, down the stretch, I thought he was all right in New Jersey when they won 4-3 against the Devils. So if he can bank a couple more, I think he'll be okay. But Toronto might be entering territory where we've got 2 goaltenders, which means really you've got none.
Fans everywhere scrambling right after hearing.
You can tell. We debated about this yesterday and prior to that. It's those 2 Stanley Cups that are hanging over Samsonov's head as well. It seems like Keefe and the rest of the organization really want Matt Murray to work out, and I completely understand that. I think the conversation about who's number 1 is going to go on until the postseason, so maybe there's no point of having that conversation for Samsonov. I think he just needs to be as good as he possibly can be, especially on the road. Okay, so they're taking on the Islanders. You got another piece on NorthStarBets.ca where you're backing the Islanders once again and the under in this game. The expectation, I think, from the Leaf side is, they would love to win and maybe gain some more ground on Tampa Bay. But I think the priority right now is trying to figure out who's going to be on defense. What are the pairings going to be up front? Do you think that sort of thinking can play into how the Leafs might play tonight?
I think for sure. I think they're going to get a playoff type of game tonight out of the Islanders. New York's not clear for a postseason spot either. I know I mentioned them as a team to watch in the Stanley Cup blog, but they're not guaranteed anything. They're sitting in that second wildcard spot. Pittsburgh's just outside of a playoff spot. So I think tonight, whatever the Leafs are thinking of deploying in the playoffs and however whatever they're testing out right now is going to get a real test, because the Islanders, they will put stress on your defense. They will finish their checks. They forecheck hard. New York's, they've won 5 of their last 7 games. So this is a team playing some pretty good hockey right now. I think the Maple Leafs are going to get a playoff-like test tonight. They're not going to be able to win this game with 4 or 5 goals like they did against the Senators. This is going to be a 3-2 game. And we'll see if the Maple Leafs can bend to that style. And something that has been a knock against them in the past is maybe they can't win these low-scoring, tight-checking games. And those are the games that seem to always appear in Game 7. So I think Toronto will get a little taste of that tonight. Also,
they're going to be in Long Island, and their favorite player to boo in Long Island is Captain Maple Leaf himself, John Tavares. Tavares had a actually surprising year, in my personal opinion. A very good year after, you kind of, yes, he makes that big ticket offer, and he might not be worth that anymore, but he's been very serviceable, been a very good player, plug and play from the center and the wing. Stevie, from your perspective, just how important is Tavares going forward for the Leafs to, get to past that first round hump?
He's huge. He's huge. Every team in that Atlantic division, all of the top contenders, they have a lethal 1-2 punch down the middle. Bergeron, Krejci in Boston. It's Stamkos, Point in Tampa Bay. Toronto, they've got Matthews, Tavares. He's going to have to hold his end of the bargain. And right now, the Maple Leafs, they're doing a lot of line changing, as you mentioned, even philosophical changes with the 11 and 7. And I think that's why you've seen Tavares' numbers drop off a little bit. If you look, he's not shooting the puck nearly as much. He's only got 2 shots on goal in his last 4 games. So not putting a lot of rubber on net. But I still think he is very important. He's having a big year, and it's just going to be a matter of can he hold up and continue to produce like this come postseason time. If he can, Toronto's got a great 1-2 down the middle of the ice, and they just got to figure out the lines. I know they've dropped Nylander down to line 3, and it's kind of been Marner's kind of getting bumped up and down, and Bunting sliding onto the second line. So I think once they settle into their lines, Toronto and Tavares specifically, you'll start to see him look more comfortable again.
Yeah, it won't be a settled unit tonight. They're going 12-6. Brody, Shen, Timmins, Simmons are all scratches. Brody blocked a shot. Isn't feeling too well. Apparently, it's day-to-day. We'll see what happens there. Steven Psihogios, before we let you go, we need your best pick of the night. I tail you on a nightly basis. So I'm assuming we got another winner here.
Thank you. Yes, I'm bringing a winner tonight. Last night was a rough one. We didn't get the Blackhawks plus 2.5. They weren't even close. But tonight we're going with the Rangers minus 110 at home against Carolina. I mentioned the Hurricanes are struggling. The Rangers are not. They've won 4 straight. They beat their last 2 opponents 13-0 combined. So give me the Blue Shirts on Broadway.
I love that. Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. Let's do it again soon.
Yep, let's talk soon, guys.
All right, thanks, Stevie. Okay, coming up after this, we got a Sfandiar coming on from the Steve Dangle Podcast Network to talk some Raptors, some Dylan Brooks as well.
He's back in the news
this guy all
every
about?
day.
Another technical.
Another story with Dylan
Kyrie
Brooks.
Irving doesn't want to give him his shirt. So
Big
much
time
going on. We'll break that all down, as well as OG Anunoby. Will he be an all-NBA defensive player this year? Stay tuned for that.